The snow fell like frozen tears that December evening, each flake a whisper of desperation in the gathering darkness. Marcus Chen had everything: a corner office on the 47th floor, a penthouse that overlooked the glittering Manhattan skyline, and a reputation as one of the youngest CEOs in the city's cutthroat financial district. But as he stepped out of his building that night, adjusting his $1,000 scarf against the bitter cold, he had no idea that a small voice in the snow would shatter everything he thought he knew about success, about purpose, about what it truly meant to be wealthy. "Sir, please. My mom didn't come home last night." Marcus almost didn't hear her. The wind was howling, and his mind was still churning through the merger details that had consumed his entire day. But something made him stop, perhaps the tremor in that small voice, or the way it cut through the corporate noise that usually filled his head. He turned and saw her, a little girl, no more than 7 years old, with dark curls escaping from beneath a threadbare pink hat. Her jacket was too thin for this weather, and her sneakers were soaked through from the snow. "What did you say?" Marcus heard himself ask, his breath forming clouds in the freezing air. The girl's eyes were huge, brown, and brimming with a fear that no child should ever have to feel. "My mom. She went to work yesterday morning, but she never came home. I waited all night. I don't know what to do." Her voice cracked, and Marcus felt something crack inside his chest too. He should have walked away. He had a dinner meeting in 20 minutes with investors who controlled millions. He should have called social services, handed this off to someone whose job it was to handle these situations. But looking down at this shivering child, Marcus found himself kneeling in the snow, his expensive suit pants immediately soaking through. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lily. My name is Lily Martinez." She wiped her nose with the back of her hand, trying so hard to be brave. "My mom, she works cleaning offices. She takes care of me and my baby brother. But she didn't come back, and my brother is crying, and I don't know where she is, and—" The words tumbled out in a rush, and then the tears came, streaming down her reddened cheeks. Marcus pulled out his phone, but Lily grabbed his arm with both her small hands. "Please, sir, don't call the police. They'll take us away. They'll separate me and my brother. Please, just help me find my mom." In that moment, Marcus Chen made a decision that defied every calculated choice he'd made in his carefully constructed life. He canceled his dinner meeting. He stood up, took off his cashmere scarf, and wrapped it around Lily's neck. "Show me where you live," he said quietly. "Let's go find your mom together." They walked 12 blocks through the thickening snow, Lily leading him away from the gleaming towers of his world into a part of the city he'd driven past 1,000 times but never truly seen. The buildings here were worn, their windows patched with cardboard and tape. Garbage overflowed from dumpsters, and the streetlights flickered uncertainly. Lily stopped in front of a narrow doorway wedged between a boarded-up laundromat and a bodega with bars on its windows. The apartment was on the 4th floor. No elevator, of course, and each step Marcus climbed felt like a journey into another universe. When Lily pushed open the door, he saw the reality of their life: a single room with a hot plate, a sagging mattress on the floor, and a playpen where a toddler sat crying, his diaper clearly needing to be changed. The room was cold, Marcus could see his breath indoors. "This is my brother, Tommy," Lily said, rushing to pick up the crying child. She held him with a tenderness that broke Marcus's heart, bouncing him gently even though she was just a child herself. "Mama usually comes home at 6. She makes us dinner, and she reads us stories, and she tucks us in. But she didn't come back. What if something bad happened? What if she's hurt?" Marcus stood frozen in the doorway, the full weight of their situation crashing over him. These children had been alone for 24 hours. Lily, at 7 years old, had been caring for a toddler, had been the only thing standing between her baby brother and complete abandonment. And she had been brave enough, desperate enough, to ask a stranger for help. "Does your mom have a phone?" Marcus asked gently. Lily shook her head. "It got shut off last month. She said we'd get it back when she saved enough." She pointed to a calendar on the wall, where shifts were marked in pencil, long hours that started before dawn and ended late at night. "She works for Better Buildings Cleaning Company. She was supposed to be at the Meridian Tower yesterday." The Meridian Tower. Marcus felt ice settle in his stomach. He knew that building, it was 2 blocks from his own office. He pulled out his phone and started making calls, using every contact he had, every favor he was owed. While Lily fed her brother crackers and water, Marcus transformed into the CEO who could move mountains with a phone call. He spoke to building security, to cleaning company supervisors, to hospital administrators. It took 45 minutes of relentless calling before he got the answer. Carolina Martinez had collapsed while cleaning on the 19th floor of the Meridian Tower. The building security had called an ambulance, but with no ID on her except her work badge, and no emergency contacts listed with her employer, she'd been admitted to Metropolitan Hospital as a Jane Doe. She was alive but had been unconscious, suffering from pneumonia and extreme exhaustion. I found her, Marcus said, and watched relief transform Lily's frightened face into something radiant. Your mom is in the hospital. She's sick, but she's going to be okay. Let's go see her. Getting 2 children to a hospital in a snowstorm should have been complicated, but Marcus's driver brought the car around immediately. In the warm backseat, with Tommy finally quiet in Lily's arms, Marcus watched this little girl who had carried the weight of the world on her small shoulders finally let herself be a child again. She pressed her face against the window, watching the snow fall, tears still streaming but mixed now with hope. At the hospital, Marcus used his influence to cut through the bureaucracy that would have kept them waiting for hours. When they finally reached Carolina Martinez's room, Lily ran to her mother's bedside, clutching her hand and sobbing. Mama, I was so scared. But I found help. I found this man, and he brought us to you. Carolina's eyes fluttered open, weak but aware, and when she saw her children safe beside her, tears rolled down her cheeks. Her gaze found Marcus, standing awkwardly in the doorway, and in her eyes he saw a gratitude that transcended words, and something else. Shame, perhaps, that a stranger had seen how close to the edge they'd been living. Marcus stepped forward. Ms. Martinez, you don't need to say anything. Just rest. I'm going to make sure everything is taken care of. And he did. Over the next few days, as Carolina recovered in the hospital, Marcus did what he did best, he solved problems. He paid her medical bills without hesitation. He arranged for child care for Lily and Tommy. But more than that, he started asking questions. How did a hard-working mother of 2 end up living in a room with no heat, working herself to collapse for wages that couldn't even keep a phone turned on? The answers made him angry, a righteous anger that burned away years of comfortable ignorance. He learned about the impossible economics of poverty, where a single unexpected expense could spiral into homelessness. He learned that Carolina worked 3 jobs but still couldn't afford to see a doctor until it was nearly too late. He learned that Lily had been stealing food from the bodega because her mother was too proud to ask for help and too exhausted to realize her children were going hungry. But Marcus also learned something else. He learned it from Lily, who despite everything, still smiled and made up silly songs to make her brother laugh. He learned it from Carolina, who apologized for being a burden even as she lay in a hospital bed she'd worked herself into. He learned that real wealth had nothing to do with the numbers in his bank account. On Christmas Eve, 3 weeks after that snowy encounter, Marcus stood in front of a brand new apartment he'd secured for the Martinez family. 2 bedrooms, heat that worked, in a safe neighborhood with good schools. Carolina had recovered and had been offered a position managing operations at Marcus's company, with real benefits and a salary that would give her children the stability they deserved. But this wasn't charity that stripped dignity, it was an opportunity earned by a woman who'd proven her work ethic and her heart. As Lily ran through the apartment, marveling at having her own bed, her own room, she suddenly stopped and ran back to Marcus. She wrapped her arms around his legs in a fierce hug. Thank you for stopping, she whispered. Thank you for not walking away. Marcus knelt down to her level, this little girl who had taught him more about courage and love than any business school ever could. Thank you for being brave enough to ask for help, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You saved your family, Lily. You saved me too, in a way. That night, standing in his penthouse looking out at the city lights, Marcus thought about the man he'd been just 3 weeks ago, successful by every measure society valued but somehow hollow. He thought about the hundreds of people who must have walked past Lily that snowy evening, too busy, too focused on their own lives to hear a child's desperate plea. He'd almost been one of them. Now, everything had changed. Marcus had started a foundation focused on supporting working families on the edge. He'd begun showing up not just as a CEO but as a human being who understood that the measure of success wasn't what you accumulated but what you gave, what bridges you built, whose hand you held when they were falling. Because on that December evening, a little girl in a thin pink hat had looked up at a stranger and gambled everything on the hope that somewhere inside his expensive suit was a human heart. And she'd been right. In saving her family, she'd saved him too, from a life of isolated success, from the poverty of never knowing what it means to truly make a difference. The snow still fell on the city, but Marcus no longer saw it as an inconvenience. He saw it as he imagined Lily must see it, as possibility, as beauty, as proof that even in the coldest winters, something pure and transformative could fall from the sky and change everything.